But we as a continent have now defined ourselves.
In the news, Buhari nominates Garba as Chief Judge of FCT High Court. CSO laments poor state of Nigeria's education system. Son of late Chad president to take over Mantle as military head. Jury deliberates verdicts in Derek Chauvin murder. Musa makes a U-turn on Pillars away games. Details shortly. This is TOS Television, your digital first Pan-African news network. I'm Ruwa Panao and this is TOS News 360. President Muhammadu Buhari has asked the Senate to approve the appointments of Justice Salisu Garba as the acting Chief Judge of the Federal Capital Territory High Court. Garba was sworn in as acting Chief Judge of the FCT High Court in January 2021 following the retirement of Justice Ishaq Bello from the position. Salisu was sworn in by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Tanko Muhammad. A civil society organization under the auspices of Association for Public Policy Analysis has lamented the poor state of the nation's education system and lackadaisical attitude of relevant government ministry, departments and agencies at addressing obvious challenges bedeviling the nation's education system. The organization raised a number of concerns at an event tagged Public Dialogue on Partnership Policy for Universal Basic Education Policy Delivery in Nigeria, with the theme Generating Input for Establishment of Partnership Performance Framework Policy for Universal Basic Education. TOS News correspondent Rose Audu has the details.
In his keynote address, the National President of Association for Public Policy Analysis, Prince Will Okorie, notes that the objective of APPA is to analyze government public policies with a view of identifying challenges that hinder implementation and profile possible solutions.
The program is in line with the main objective of our association, which is to analyze public policies made by government with a view to identifying challenges that hinder effective implementation and come up with advocacy programs to address identified challenges to enhance implementation so as to improve the quality of life for Nigerians and enhance national development.
Speaking earlier, the group's programs director, Elizabeth Pius, said the dialogue is an advocacy program targeted at generating ideas and relevant opinions.
Dialogue is a strategy, advocacy program designed by our association to generate ideas, opinions, and relevant information that will lead to designing of draft policy document for partnership performance framework.
Representatives of the Universal Basic Education, USAID, Algon, and Sustainable Development Agencies also shares their thoughts on promoting the nation's education sector and curb insecurity in the country.
There is a need for USAID and other development partners to work together with the government at all levels, federal, state, and local, professional associations such as teachers associations and other members of civil society to ensure that our resources are spent wisely and transparently.
SDG 4 is talking about education, and when you've achieved education, I think you've achieved all.
The group further urged all hands to be on deck to provide solutions to all national issues by investing meaningfully in the education sector.
Benue State has recorded another tanker explosion barely 2 days after a petroleum tanker fire caused the deaths of at least 12 persons in the state. Today, a tanker went up in flames and burned some houses. No life was lost. The vice chairman of Agatu local government area, John Ikwulono, said the tanker, which was fully loaded with the fuel, fell and caught fire between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. No fewer than 73 people were said to have gone missing, with about 2,000 others, mostly women and children, displaced following an attack on Dogongawa community in Takum local government area of Taraba State. According to reports, the attackers laid siege to the community on Friday morning, came in Hilux vans, shot sporadically in the air, burning 30 houses and injuring 2 persons in the process. On Monday, April 19, Vice President Yemi Osibanjo appealed to the United States of America to halt the moves made by some countries to dump fossil fuel. While at a virtual meeting at the 2021 Johns Hopkins University African Studies Program Conference, where the Vice President was represented by Laolu Akonde, his Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, the Vice President was concerned with how the United States can reform its foreign policy agenda with the African continent in order to lead Africa into prosperity. He said it was necessary for the U.S. to join forces with Africa in resolving the challenge of climate change. This is your digital first Pan-African News Network, TOS Television. You are watching TOS News 360. Stories from across Africa after the break. Veteran President Idris Deby Itno, who ruled Chad for 30 years, has died of injuries suffered on the front line while fighting rebels in the north of the Sahel country, an army spokesman said on Tuesday. General Azem Bemandoa Aguna, in a statement read out on state television, said Deby, 68, breathed his last breath while defending the sovereign nation on the battlefield over the weekend. This comes just a day after he was re-elected for a 6th term, with 79.32% of the vote, provisional election results showed. Shortly after the army said it had defeated a rebellion launched on election day and killed more than 300 enemies advancing on the capital. Deby came to power in a rebellion in 1990 and is one of Africa's longest-serving leaders. The Chadian army has announced that General Muhammad Idris Deby Itno, a 4-star general and son of Chad's slain president Idris Deby Itno, will replace him as the head of his military council. The army spokesman, General Azem Bemandoa Aguna, said on state radio shortly after the announcement that the newly re-elected president had died of wounds while fighting rebels in the north of Chad, that a military council had been set up and will be headed by the late president's son. Somalia's President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo has called on the African Union to lead talks on the dispute over elections in his country, a process that could lead to a free and fair election. The president said all stakeholders will participate in the talks for the future of the country's democracy. The Somali president visited the Democratic Republic of Congo President Felix Tshisekedi in Kinshasa, who is also the AU chairperson. President Tshisekedi welcomed the Somali president's willingness in the spirit of African solidarity to confide in him as current president of the African Union in accordance with the relevant provisions of the AU Charter. The African Union has condemned the extension of Farmajo's term in office by 2 years as voted by the Somali parliament last week. Speaking to the press, the two heads of state said they had discussed bilateral relations. Elections in Somalia have been delayed because of disagreements among regional and federal governments. The charges against several personalities, including a former prime minister and a star radio host since December, accused of preparing a coup d'etat with mysterious outlines, has been dropped. This was confirmed by Mali's Supreme Court on Monday. Nearly after 4 months in detention, the 5 detained personalities, including the activist and radio host Mohammed Yusuf Bathili, known as Razbath, were released on Monday afternoon. By virtue of his rank, ex-Prime Minister Boubou Cissé appeared in the case as the possible instigator of this alleged new coup. An arrest warrant was issued for him in late 2020, but he was not arrested. Reacting in a statement, Cissé said the decision by the Supreme Court puts a definite end to the sinister case and hopefully to the unnecessary persecution and attempts to undermine his honor and dignity as part of an imaginary plot. A report commissioned by the Rwandan government concludes that France was aware that a genocide was being prepared in Rwanda ahead of the 1994 killings. Consequently, the French government bears significant responsibility for enabling a foreseeable genocide. Monday, on the Rwanda government website the report was published. Between April and July of 1994, some 800,000 people were slaughtered, mainly from the ethnic Tutsi minority, but also some Hutus. The 600-page report says that France did nothing to stop the massacres in April and May 1994, and in the years after the genocide, it rather tried to cover up its role and even offered protection to some perpetrators. This is your digital first Pan-African news network, TOS Television. You're watching TOS News 360, stories from the globe scenes after this break. And on the global scene, the jury who sat quietly off camera in the trial of Derek Chauvin, the ex-Minneapolis policeman accused of killing George Floyd last year, had retired to consider its verdict. The 12 sequestered jurors of 6 white people and 6 black or multiracial people are expected to consider 3 weeks of testimony from 45 witnesses, including bystanders and medical experts, along with hours of video evidence. The jury of 6 white people and 6 people who are black or multiracial was set for its first full day of deliberations. The jury, anonymous by order of the judge, spent just a few hours on their tax Monday, listening to closing arguments from the prosecutors and defense team.
But for the defendant's actions, pushing him down, would George Floyd have died that day? Was it drugs? He just miraculously die of a drug overdose in that time? Maybe it was the tailpipe. Maybe it was his enlarged heart. Maybe not. Use your common sense. Use your common sense. Believe your eyes, what you saw.
Position during restraint is not an inherently dangerous act. It is routinely trained and used by the Minneapolis Police Department.
Defense lawyer Eric Nelson.
We have to analyze this case from the perspective of a reasonable police officer at the precise moment with the totality of the circumstances.
Chauvin has pleaded not guilty to second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree depraved mind murder, and second-degree manslaughter. As the world enters the second year of the COVID-19 pandemic, the annual Global Energy Review of the International Energy Agency, which assesses the direction of energy demand and carbon dioxide emissions in 2021, predicts a major surge in CO2 emissions. Global energy demand is set to increase by 4.6% in 2021, more than offsetting the 4% contraction in 2020 and pushing demand of 0.5% above 2019 levels. Almost 70% of the projected increase in global energy demand is in emerging markets and developing economies, where demand is set to rise to 3.4% above 2019 levels. Energy use in advanced economies is on course to be 3% below pre-COVID levels. Coal demand is on course to rise 4.5% in 2021, with more than 80% of the growth concentrated in Asia. Natural gas demand is set to grow by 3.2%, propelled by increasing demand in Asia, the Middle East, and Russia, while electricity demand is due to increase by 4.5%. Demand for all fossil fuels is set to grow significantly in 2021. Coal demand alone is projected to increase by 60% more than all renewables combined. Despite an expected annual increase of 6.2% in 2021, global oil demand is set to remain around 3% below 2019 levels. A full return to pre-crisis oil demand levels would have pushed up CO2 emissions a further 1.5%, putting them well above 2019 levels. On Tuesday, over 30 South Korean students shaved their heads in front of the Japanese embassy to protest Japan's decision to release water from its crippled Fukushima nuclear plant into the sea. The police periodically dispersed the college students who chanted and held up placards, but they did not stop the event from taking place, although there is a ban on gatherings larger than 10 people. The demonstrators who shaved their heads wore protective sheets with messages condemning the Japanese plan and calling for it to be scrapped. One of them had the message: the Japanese government should immediately cancel the plan to release the contaminated water. The Japanese government said it will release more than 1 million tons of treated water from the Fukushima expert site in stages starting in about 2 years. Seoul has strongly condemned the decision, with the foreign ministry summoning the Japanese ambassador and President Moon Jae-in ordering officials to explore petitioning an international court. Prestigious credit rating firm Moody's has predicted that Ghana will find it more expensive to borrow funds to run its economy. They have based this on a decline in its revenues and an increase in the interest rate it pays on debts. Placing the country on a B3 with a negative outlook, the credit rating agency said the country has high exposure to external financing and it is important for the country to implement a strict austere budget. Valued at almost $70 billion, Ghana's economy has so far experienced 2 quarters of the drop in its gross domestic product in the first and second quarters. South Africa's respected economist Miyelani Maluleke has given his expectations of inflation as a 3% rise in March, even as preparations are made to soon release the consumer price inflation rate for the month. The increment is expected to come from higher fuel prices, and February's 2.9% inflation is not expected to spiral out of control. The expectation that the South African bank will keep interest rates at its current levels throughout 2021. You're still watching TOS News 360 on your digital first Pan-African news network, TOS Television. More stories in business and sports when we return. Ivory Coast International Cocoa Organization has highlighted the reduced farm gate price being paid to farmers in the country. The ICCO noted that the mid-crop season, which begins in April, led to a 25% reduction, in payments from the Ivorian government to farmers. Its neighboring country, Ghana, had more stability and maintained its farm gate price for the 2020/21 mid-crop at the same level announced for the main crop. Overall, the downward trend in cocoa prices in the last month was propelled by various factors. FIFA President Gianni Infantino has stated that there is no doubt whatsoever that football's world governing body disapproves of the proposed European Super League (ESL) and also added that clubs involved could face consequences. 12 major clubs announced plans Monday, April 19th for a new breakaway league, which would drastically change the landscape of the world's most popular sport. Infantino stated that the body can only and strongly disapprove the creation of the Super League, which is a breakaway from the current institutions, from the leagues, from the associations, from UEFA and from FIFA, and added that there is no doubt whatsoever about FIFA's disapproval. Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur are the 6 English clubs involved, together with Barcelona, Atletico Madrid and Real Madrid from Spain and Italian trio Juventus, AC Milan and Inter Milan. Caterpillar's new high-prone signing, Ahmed Musa, is set to miss over 80% of the team's away matches as the second stanza of the Nigeria's Professional Football League begins in April 28th. The announcement of the Super Eagles captain as Pillar's new signing elicited excitement among fans of the domestic league, but our correspondent learned that the former Leicester City forward told the club management in clear terms that he will not be available for away games. Chairman of the club, Surajo Yahaya, confirmed that although the player would be available for every home fixture, he would not be part of most of their away games. With the revelation, Musa is expected to make his entrance for Pillars on May 5 when the side Musa Gida welcomes Enyimba. He will miss the team's next 2 games against Warri Wolves and Plateau United. Players of Nigeria Women's Football League side Pelican Stars have blamed the club's financial crisis for their poor start to the league, which cost them a place in the Super 6, which began on Monday. The Calabar-based club endured yet another poor season as they finished 10th on the league table, a position which saw them miss out of the slot for the Super 6, where the champions of the league would be decided. The players had protested and barricaded the government house in Calabar last year over 14-month unpaid salaries. And that is TOS News 360 on your digital first Pan-African network. For more updates, visit www.tostvnetwork.com. Do follow and like TOS TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And remember to subscribe on YouTube. To stay with us and enjoy more programs on TOS Television Network. I'm Ruwa Panao, and thank you for watching.